Good morning. My name is Samuel Vinicor, and I'm going to be talking to you today about master data management. Don't let the name fool you, though. What we're really here to talk about is the significant business value hidden in all the data you already have in different parts of your organization. And when I say business value, I'm not just talking about cutting costs and growing revenue. I'm talking about fundamentally freeing your staff to make great wine and engage consumers. The core problem here is so deep that it's literally taken me 20 years of working in this space as a technologist to really be able to talk about it. Luckily, the thumbnail version takes just one slide. The problem is easy to recognize by its symptoms. Data these days is splintered and duplicated and just plain wrong across multiple different business systems in most organizations. Getting these systems tied together and getting the data to all play nice together is what we're here to talk about. The solution is master data management, and beyond that, something we call data mastery. These are insanely deep topics, so I'll be covering a ton of ground here at a billion-foot level. But we're recording this session, so the video will be available on our website later if you want to review anything, and I've included a set of reference links at the end. The main takeaway is that data mastery is something we all need to care about, because having a correct and complete bird's eye view of all your organizational data is critical not only to regulatory compliance, but to objectively growing your business year over year in substantial and sustainable ways. The first question is how to even begin to tie different business systems together to comprehensively support winery business operations. This is our primary mission at Winery Connect. I promise you this presentation will not be a sales pitch. Most of what I'm going to talk about today we can't actually do at the moment. And in fact, some of the challenges I'll talk about can't be fixed with technology alone. But the starting point for the discussion on how we fix data is how we can economically connect the software systems wineries use to support different parts of their operation. For the last 8 years, we've worked with wineries to understand what business systems work well for them and to get those systems to work well together. The core way we do this is through our unique and proven ability to provide virtual IT department capabilities specifically to wineries. The question this begs is, what is an IT department? So let's take a look at what's inside. An IT department is first and foremost made up of people. Human beings who not only understand technology and how to make it work for your industry, they understand your company intimately. They know your products and customers and can help your staff with whatever IT challenges they face on a day-to-day basis. This is what we call our Grape Squad, and I'm not going to talk about that here. If you'd like to learn more about the Grape Squad, please visit us on the trade show floor. What I am going to talk about is technology. This is the other big part of what makes up an IT department. People plus technology, in that order. I'm a technologist. I've been in technology for over 25 years, and about 20 years ago, I worked in the Xerox Core Integration Group for a number of years. While I was there, the chief architect at Xerox mentored me in enterprise software architecture and enterprise application integration, and that set the tone for my career. I've worked in these areas ever since, but primarily for large companies which could afford to have fully staffed IT departments. In 2012, I started Winery Connect to try and bring what I'd learned to small and mid-sized wineries and craft beverage producers. I hope to show in this session how over time, and particularly over the last 8 years, technology has evolved such that it's now possible to create a completely cloud-based business ecosystem, and how mining clean, well-structured data from across the clouds can give even smaller producers business flexibilities and organizational insights previously only available to large organizations. Now the question that begs is, what are clouds? There's a highly technical definition of what true cloud is, which luckily for us doesn't matter for this conversation. We're going to use the colloquial definition of the cloud, which is simply software being delivered as a service. All the computing power and data is out there somewhere in the clouds, and all you do is use your web browser or an app on your phone to access incredibly powerful software. The problem these days is that there are many, many, many clouds. There are beautiful clouds, like this wave cloud. There are clouds that can catch rainbows. There are so many clouds, and they're so beautiful that your business can get lost in the clouds. For the last 8 years, Winery Connect has worked to understand what makes wineries tick across what we call seed to sale to social, from growing grapes to making wine to selling in all the regulated ways producers sell, all the way to consumers tasting the wine and socially interacting about their experiences. In the process, we've also come to understand how these requirements overlap what cideries, breweries, and distilleries need, so our core strength is that we continue to support total beverage alcohol producers better and better over the years. What we've done is work with producers to categorize the clouds, to understand which clouds work best across selling online, particularly via subscription wine clubs, selling in the tasting room and festivals and such with a modern point-of-sale system, down to growing grapes and making wine with a cloud and mobile production control system. I'll get more into what this business ecosystem looks like and how we get to mastering data across the ecosystem in a moment. But first, I'm going to take a huge jump back and look at what led up to business ecosystems even being possible. In 2018, when I realized we were talking about a business ecosystem, I did some research on business ecosystem selling and found the article which is linked at the bottom. This image was at the top, and it blew my mind. If you look back to the beginning of the industrial age, the adding machine and the teletype, the purpose of electronic technology has always been to automate. At the start of the information age, the mainframe came about and introduced a level of efficiency on top of the automation, enabling data to be collected and managed across a business process. At the middle of the information age, the client-server revolution happens, and we break out of the glass houses. A wave of competition and innovation creates a level of effectiveness on top of the efficiency, working across business processes and getting more and more nuanced into what each kind of business needs. At the same time, business data was splintered. The client-server revolution, and then even more the internet when that came about, resulted in incredible new capabilities, but at the same time, data was split between more and more different systems from different vendors. At the end of the information age, as you move into what this image is calling the digital age, cloud and mobile comes around, and data becomes even more dynamic, leading to what from my perspective is the most interesting thing in this diagram. In the upper right-hand corner here, you see that as we enter the digital age, platforms are replaced by business ecosystems. It's no longer possible to have one system which is the best at everything a growing business needs, so a business ecosystem becomes necessary. If you draw a line down, you see this happen just about in 2012, and what it enables is this rapidly scaling yellow area to the right, which represents innovation. As change and disruption continues, business ecosystems along with master data management support extremely flexible innovation, with things like Internet of Things to gather real-time production data and artificial intelligence to learn from it. Now let's get a little bit more specific and look at exactly what a winery business ecosystem has to handle. At the highest level, the winery business is fairly simple. Wineries make wine and store it in a bonded warehouse. They then sell this wine through multiple heavily regulated channels and eventually account for all of this, typically in QuickBooks. The key to understanding the business and being able to improve profitability over time is to understand your data. Specifically, we care about customers' products and orders across the commerce channels. This is particularly important for wineries because regulatory reporting needs to encompass all that data, but every business needs to be able to make strategic decisions based on good data. Traditionally, the way this would happen was that a business would implement one large system to handle all their core requirements, and then data would be in one place by definition. The problem is that when you get even a little bit into the details, you realize that wineries are in fact massively complex operations. They're in agriculture, they're manufacturing a controlled substance, selling it in multiple heavily regulated channels. In particular online, wineries want to be able to grow monthly recurring revenue by building a large wine club. But beyond this, wineries often have full-service restaurants, get into weddings and events, and much more. There simply is no system out there that can handle all these requirements at all well, so wineries need to depend on multiple best-of-breed systems to get work done. By definition, this means that someone needs to tie all these systems together for the business to operate efficiently, and maybe more importantly, to be able to produce an accurate bird's-eye view of all the operational data. This is what we mean when we're talking about a winery business ecosystem. Now let's dig a little deeper into what we mean by operational data. Typically, as producers are forced to use different systems which best support each part of their operation, data ends up splintered among those systems. The technical way to say this is to say that the data is siloed. Each department is able to work efficiently, but data which has to be shared between departments ends up being manually re-entered into each system, which ends up being a huge unseen cost, not only in terms of staff time, but staff satisfaction, and even in many cases customer satisfaction when mistakes are made that affect them. The good news is that because all these systems live in their own clouds, it becomes possible to integrate those clouds with another cloud. I won't get into detail here, but this is the key innovation which has only existed in the last 8 years, making a cloud business ecosystem possible. Customers' product and orders are automatically synchronized between systems, so everyone is on the same page without any manual effort. Digging in one level deeper, we see that even keeping these few pieces of data in sync ends up being a bit complicated. Products should be unique by SKU across the systems. Customers should be unique by email. Beyond that, you have categories and inventory levels for products, customer groups for customers, and taxes, discounts, and shipping tied to orders. Believe me when I say that we're still just scratching the surface here in terms of complexity around commerce data. Let's dig for a moment more, for example, into product data. We've got the unique SKU we talked about. Then there's a set of product attributes supported by most commerce systems, things like name, description, and price. You may want values for these attributes to be the same between your online store and your point of sale, or you may want them to be different. Beyond this, there are any number of additional product attributes which are not directly supported by most commerce systems. These are critical to building wine text sheets and such, but far beyond that, this data can drive entirely new levels of business intelligence when combined with other operational data. Ideally, you want a flexible ability to add any additional product attributes you want, and then to enable staff to enter all this extra data once, even if you aren't using a production control system. As wineries grow, however, the value of production control automation increases, and production control systems are one of the biggest untapped sources of data out there. There are fantastic systems available to help wineries manage everything from growing and harvesting grapes to making and bottling wine. One of the key requirements here is a clean mobile interface to make it easy to capture good data. From a commerce perspective, the key pieces of data this all results in are a SKU, an accurate cost of goods sold, which most wineries struggle to arrive at, and a bottling count. Production control systems, however, will also contain a vast trove of fantastic data around the product. Imagine for a minute the things we might find out if we are able to combine all this detailed product data sitting back in our production control systems with data from all our commerce systems. Before we can even begin to think about leveraging all this data, however, we need to deal with a massive elephant in the room. Data in most operational systems today is a mess, particularly customer data, which tends to be vastly different between online stores, point of sale, email marketing systems, and so on, and incorrect in many of them. Many wineries we've worked with have struggled to get a clear understanding of even who their customers really are, let alone which customers are most loyal and what their preferences are. What's needed is the core thing we're here to talk about, Master Data Management, or MDM. Wikipedia says MDM can be viewed as a discipline for specialized quality improvement, the ultimate goal of which is to provide the end-user community with a trusted single version of the truth from which to base decisions. This is the key. MDM is about properly supporting your most strategic decision-making with complete and accurate and robust data from across your organization. As you're all undoubtedly aware, this is easier said than done, and it's not just a technological issue. MDM is a huge area, and I'm not even going to try to do it just in this session. I'm just going to touch on a few key concepts to give you a sense of how big a challenge this is. The first is what's called data governance, which encompasses the people, processes, and information technology required to create a consistent and proper handling of all an organization's data across the business. A data steward is an actual role within your organization, a person whose job it is to make sure the data is as good and as clean as possible. A data steward might be responsible for one data domain, as they call it in MDM terminology, customer or product, for instance, or they may be in charge of multiple domains. The golden record is a cool concept. This is typically created in the middle between all the operational systems as the best version of the truth. Parts of this golden record can be created automatically, and in some cases, staff need to make decisions about what data is the best data. Which leads us to the last thing to keep in mind when it comes to data, which is that the work is never done. No matter how much we automate things, there are always going to be opportunities for human error all over the place, and there are cases where data naturally becomes muddy in the normal course of business. The classic case is a customer who comes into the tasting room and gives one email address to the cashier, but then goes home and signs up to your online store with a different email address. Even in its fullest form, MDM technology can't always automatically clean up this type of situation, but it can recognize these situations and give staff an easy way to merge records which seem similar. So that's MDM. It's a quest. It's extremely difficult, if not impossible, to truly come to one source of the truth. But the good news is that there are a number of things which can be done relatively easily to get far more consistent and accurate data automatically. This immediately cuts cost and frees up staff to do more value-added work, and it also leads directly to fundamentally better support for business decision-making. Drilling a moment more into why we need good data from across the organization, I'll just touch on a couple points. First is compliance. Particularly for vertically integrated producers, there are a number of compliance issues which require accurate data from different parts of the operation. As just one example, think about excise tax. To properly compute excise tax, we need to know how much wine was in the bonded warehouse at the beginning of the period and how much was in bond at the end of the period, and the difference is what we owe excise on. But then we need to know what was tasted, because that's an exception, what went out through distribution, because that's a bond-to-bond transfer, and we need to know all of this, not in bottles, but in gallons of still versus fortified versus sparkling. It would be pretty handy if you could automatically pull together data from these different systems to get these answers. Business intelligence scenarios are too various to begin to get into, but we can talk quickly about two general types of business intelligence. The first is reporting. All operational systems will come with some form of reporting, and often these are extremely useful ways to track what are called key performance indicators, or KPIs. Much more rarely, organizations are able to access true analytics. This is a tricky concept, but at the high level, the important thing to know is that even though people often say reporting and analytics in the same breath, many things which call themselves analytics are really just reports on steroids. True analytics can identify huge opportunities for improvement and are traditionally driven by what are called data cubes, which we'll get into more in a minute. The next big concept I want to introduce is what we call data mastery. As we discussed, MDM is about arriving at a single version of the truth. Data mastery goes beyond this to achieve high-impact business outcomes based on the mastered data. To begin with, data mastery includes automation. When we integrate systems and then master data across those systems, we get to consistent data. At the same time, we put ourselves in a position where we can do extremely powerful things in the middle to change how data flows between systems to support changing business processes. This is a pretty abstract concept, but I'll give you a couple specific examples which should make it clear how this enables fundamental business flexibility. For instance, when a customer comes into your tasting room and gives their email address to the cashier, wouldn't it be nice if an account could automatically be created for them in your online store and an email automatically sent to them thanking them for their visit and giving them a discount coupon for their first online order? Another great example. Many wineries we've worked with will manually figure out who qualifies for their reward club based on their purchase history across online and point of sale, manually change the customer group for those customers in both systems, communicate with the customer about their rewards, and finally manually try to keep on top of who's expired year over year. All of this can be automated when data is mastered. Automation is relatively easy once systems are integrated into a business ecosystem, but data mastery goes much farther. The true goal of data mastery is to distill all operational data from across the organization, along with other things which might be of interest. Things like real-time temperature readings from throughout the season, into what's called a data cube. The data cube is focused on a core piece of data. So for instance, the core of a data cube could be a dollar amount tied to a transaction. But that transaction also has any number of other pieces of data related to it in what are called dimensions of the cube. What products were purchased? Who purchased them? When was the purchase made? What day, what week, what month, what season? All this data is baked into this data cube, giving us a global and very powerful ability to learn from organizational data. With the data mastered, we can do incredibly powerful things. In the business intelligence space, terms such as slicing and dicing, rolling up and drilling down and pivoting cover a range of techniques, which, when used with a well-populated data cube, can lead to some very interesting results. The broad goal is to distill the massive data from across the organization and beyond, what's sometimes called big data, into true analytics to support good business decisions. Large corporations have been making decisions this way for a decade or more. Cloud business ecosystems make it possible for you to make decisions the way Constellation Treasury and Gallo do. These decisions will drive to broadly desired business outcomes, such as customer acquisition. For instance, the data might point to a geography where a marketing push could best win new customers. Customer retention, what loyalty programs are your customers actually responding to? And customer growth, using data to understand how to deepen your relationships with different groups of customers based on their behavior so that they buy more wine from you. And of course the obvious, an ability to model and predict revenue across a range of assumptions. Finally, a key goal all of this drives towards is the ability to have organizational and operational dashboards show you at a glance how the whole organization is doing, with an ability to drill into each area for more detail. Beyond the basic dashboard controls, there are a range of dashboard elements which can be used to do what's called data visualization. Dashboards which are properly put together can show you things you might not expect. Things like people drinking rosé wines throughout the year, or that red wine is hot with boomers, but rosé is hot with the millennials. And again, when production data is included, we can start to ask some very interesting questions. The ability to see detailed correlations between sales data and production details like pH, residual sugar, or how long the wine spent on the skins makes it possible to produce wines that maximize revenue and profitability. So we've covered an incredible amount of ground. The concept I want to leave you with is IT as a service. This is the technical term for the virtual IT department we talked about at the start of the session. If you think about it, wineries don't make their own tanks, and they don't make their own bottling equipment. But many wineries we've met struggle with finding the best technology to support the business, getting that technology to actually work, let alone work together, and producing accurate business and regulatory reporting needed by management. IT as a service is a model for delivering these services in a way which drives directly to desired business outcomes. The core idea is that people who specialize in technology can progressively learn from producers across the industry how best to support them, and then, with the advances made in technology in the digital age over the last 8 years, it becomes possible to deliver integration as a service, tie the clouds together into a business ecosystem, and work towards data mastery across the ecosystem. I've included a set of links here which you can check out at your convenience if you'd like to dive deeper into any of the topics I've touched on. And if you'd like to see a full ecosystem in action, or if you have questions we don't get to in Q&A, please visit us on the trade show floor. I'm going to turn it over now to Craig Ross, Vice President of Sales at True Commerce and External, who will take us out of the abstract and into some clear examples of how you can take advantage of good data. Craig?